All right, the recording has begun. It's 12:03. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Diversity Bluebook Session, and this is the first year we are actually facilitating a Bluebook session targeted at diverse students. So we want this to be, a super highly interactive session. Feel free to chime in using, the raise hand feature, or just if you want to ask any questions. We know this is titled Bluebook Session, but this is the 5th Bluebook Session. The three of you may have joined other previous Bluebook sessions. So we are going to also discuss the petition process, being a diverse student on the journals, any and all issues related to petition or questions that you may have. We are also happy to answer any questions regarding course selection, going into the second year and stuff like that. So feel free to make this super interactive. And also, we were informed that a few people were not able to join because they were competing SSG sessions and whatnot. So this is going to be recorded. Even if we don't have any questions coming in from participants, I have a list of questions purely from a diverse student standpoint. I will post those questions to the panelists and we can get started from there. So we'll begin with introductions. My name is Navin. Like the other four panelists, I'm a rising 3L. I will be the incoming editor-in-chief of the Journal of Law and Inequality for volume 39. I will let others introduce themselves. Maybe, we'll begin with Shantal.
I'm Shantal. I'm the lead articles editor on the Minnesota Journal of Law, Science, and Technology. If you have questions about what that is, I'm happy to help. I'm also a rising 3L. And that's basically all you need to know about me. Brennan.
I'm Maddie, she, he. I am a 2L now. I'll be a 3L next year. And I will also be, or I am, a managing editor on volume 39 of the Journal of Law and Inequality.
Hey everyone, my name is Brennan Lee. I'm going to be a note and comment editor for the Minnesota Journal of International Law. Next year, also a rising 3L. And I just want to say, thank you for joining us today. I remember attending my session last year and words getting thrown out that I didn't understand. So if we do that at any point, please feel free to message us in the chat or message us privately. Totally open to explaining some of those things, even as we've already gone through our introductions, things like note and comment editor, editor-in-chief, managing editor. Those will be things that you pick up as you go on the journal. They're not overly important to the petitioning process, but feel free to ask us any of those questions throughout the time today.
And then I'm Aaron Moses. I'm also a rising 3L, and I'm on the Minnesota Law Review, and I'm a articles editor, or going to be an articles editor for volume 105 for MLR. And yeah, I mean, I can kind of explain a little bit more if anyone's interested, but I just kind of help select the articles that will be published in the next volume. So that's kind of what an articles editor does. But as Brennan mentioned, it's okay if you don't really know what any of that means. It's not really overly important for the petitioning process.
All right, thank you all. Shantal, before I hand it over to you, I'll just mention a few housekeeping logistical stuff. As Shantal is going through the introduction, the welcome, the rest of the agenda, I'm going to be sharing a few resources on the chat window. Unfortunately, on Zoom, it doesn't come up as a link naturally, so you would have to copy and paste and download. So specifically for this exercise, if all of you can download the Word document onto your desktop, the comments would be a little bit more easier to navigate than if we were to just access through Google Docs. And otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat window, or just feel free to raise your hand, or just come on Zoom and then feel free to interject. Thank you. Shantal, over to you.
Sweet, thanks, Navin. So as I'm sure you know at this point, a petition is what you do to get onto one of our journals. If you have questions about like the specifics of petitioning, please shoot them in the chat window or just like unmute and ask us right now. Or you can email that email at the top, lawpetitioning@umn.edu. If you want to learn more about specific journals, again, we're happy to answer those questions. Or you can email the editors-in-chief, which is like the president or like leader of the journal among the students at the emails that are listed. Then for the rest of the day, we're going to go through, or like the rest of this session, we're going to talk about why we blue book and why we're like measuring your ability to blue book in the petition. We'll talk about what the blue book looks like and a little bit more about the petition process. We'll walk through the blue book rules really, really briefly, and we're happy to answer questions for that. And then we'll focus the bulk of our time on examples. But before we dive into any of that, we just want to ask, are there any questions we can answer for you up front right now? And if you just want to unmute or shoot them in the chat window, I'll give you like 10-15 seconds to do that.
I have a large list of questions, but don't feel compelled to answer them right now. They're not like on one topic either. So I just put them all in the chat, and so take your time. And like we can do the Bluebook session and come back to it. I just don't want to forget.
Okay. Let me look through them and see if there's anything that would be helpful to get answered right away.
While Shantal is doing that, I was just going to say, like, since we call this a Bluebook session, but we want this to be highly interactive, and I see a lot of questions that are like pertinent both to the petition and then else, outside the petition process as well. So if every panelist is in agreement, like, we can quickly go through the Bluebook portion and maybe, allocate some not so insignificant time for answering these questions, and also just going through our experience. I also see really good questions about personal statements, if that works for you all.
Yeah. It looks like we have 3 students here. Did all of you attend another blue booking session? Yes. So maybe we should start with the questions. Navin, thoughts?
I agree.
Okay. So the first question is, for those of you in clinic, what kind of course load did you have? And I'm not in a clinic, but I know some of our panelists probably are. So
I can start. I know there are other people in clinic too. I was also in a clinic. I am in the detainee rights clinic, which I think actually it was 4 credits fall, 3 credits spring. So it's one of the clinics that kind of has the most credit load and workload. And I was also a staffer on the Journal of Law and Inequality. So I found it manageable. I mean, I also, I think I was at like 14 credits, maybe 15 fall semester. So maybe not as high as other people. But I definitely found it manageable. I found that the workload for journal was spread out. You have assignments that last about 2 weeks in total for journal, and I didn't think it was anything crazy. You also have your note, so your big kind of paper that you write the first year you're on the journal as a staffer, and that took up like the most significant time, I would say, in like journal work. The site checking assignments and the racking assignments are very manageable, I would say.
Maddie, can you explain what racking is?
Yeah, so racking is where okay, I'm gonna back up. So next year I'm gonna be a managing editor on the journal. So a racking assignment is where someone who's a managing editor for the specific article that you're working on sends you a list of all of the sources that are in the article. So like every single source that the author of the article has used has cited in that article. So it's like usually like 150 or something around there. And it's divided up between a panel of staffers. Usually there are, I would say, 4 to 5 maybe staffers per article. And you have maybe, okay, my math is like bad, like maybe 20, 30 sources, and you're responsible for just tracking the source down and putting it somewhere where the people who site check the article for the sources can find them. So if it's a book, you rent the book from the library. If it's a case, you download the case from whatever research thing is applicable, stuff like that. And it's, I would say it doesn't take too much time.
I'm just going to interject, and for the sake of folks who are joining in, I see a few familiar names joining in. For folks who just joined us, we are basically discussing a few questions that came up, primarily because the folks who were on there had already attended a Bluebook session, and we were also told, like, you know, there's going to be not a lot of folks joining us because of competing other, you know, events happening. So although this is Bluebooking session, we're going to have it super interactive and conversational. We're going to talk about everything related to petition process or otherwise. We will get to the Bluebooking session, but we're just answering a few basic petition related and other questions. This is just an FYI for folks joining in. Oh, cool. Thanks, Brennan. I just saw your chat. That's very helpful. So I'll just maybe, you know, I use this opportunity to answer a quick question about Shantal raised. This is Sarani's question, if I'm not wrong. So I was in the consumer protection clinic. Like Maddie's, it was also a 4+3 credit year-long clinic. And I'm also going to be on the clinic next year. You know, like Maddie, I was also a staff member on JLI doing the racking exercise that she explained, and we'll also talk about site checking. I think, you know, it was pretty manageable, at least for me. I had a little bit of work experience before coming in, so I wanted to keep myself a little busy. And clinic just gives you real life practical experience. There are folks who are, you know, working, externing, judicial externships. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, it's a very subjective question. So whatever feels manageable for you, do it. And I think I did like 14 credits, both the semesters, the second year. And I also worked at the State Public Defender's Office. So it was still manageable. It's not undoable, but, you know, which is also subjective.
There are a lot of questions that kind of run somewhere in the vein of like, how much work does journal take, or like, can I do journal in this other thing? So from my experience on Journal of Law, Science, and Technology, the amount of work is really what you make it. Like, you can put a lot of work into making sure you get every single like nitpicky blue book rule exactly right. Or you can not and still pass the class. And I'm not trying to like encourage that, but I also just like to be upfront, like you're not, if you miss a blue book rule, it's going to be fine once you're on a journal. And so I think that's something that I just didn't understand. And so I want to be upfront about that. And then again, with your note, like, it is what you make it. If you want it to be published, you're going to be working on it hard and a lot. I knew I wanted to like dive in depth to a topic that probably wasn't going to be useful just because there aren't a lot of sources out there on it yet. And so it doesn't make a great student note, but I was interested in it and I decided to write on it. I've had a ton of fun. It hasn't been awful work because I was interested in the topic. And so it really is just what you make it as far as that goes. I don't know, Aron, my impression is maybe law review is a little bit different, but I would say I probably do 2 to 6 hours of journal work maximum a week. Other than, you know, 2 or 3 weeks where I was working kind of heavily on my note.
Yeah, I can just kind of bounce off of what you said there. So I guess the one difference for law review is that we publish 6 issues for the year. So there's like 3 site checks each semester. I think some of the other journals do a little bit less. So in that sense, it's a little bit more work. But I think, again, the site checking and racking it's very similar in all the journals. And I think it's one of those things where, the first one, I think for all of us was quite difficult. But the nice thing is that you, as a 2L, you're able to kind of sit down with the managing editor, the 3L, who's working with you on that site check. And they at MLR, they go through kind of like mistakes that you made, things to improve on, and you kind of get a score back. So there's like feedback so that you know where to focus on and improve a little bit for the second site check. But I mean, everyone understands that first site check, it's the first time, and it's difficult. And so it's okay to, like Shantal said, it's okay to make a few mistakes. It's really not the end of the world. You won't get kicked out of journal or anything like that. But it's one of those things that if you are in one of the journals, it's still, important to put in the work and try to do your best to get the site checks right, because then that just leaves less work for the 3L managing editors to do. And then just one thing to come back really quickly is, so I was in the family law clinic this year, and as similar to Navin, I'll be a student director for the clinic. And it was 4 and then 3 credits in the spring. And I think with clinic and journal, I think it was manageable. I saw a question someone said, is like moot court and journal manageable? I didn't do both, so I guess I wouldn't be able to speak on that. But I think if you did clinic, moot court, and journal, it's obviously depends on the individual person, but I think that might be a lot. But I think clinic and journal is very manageable, as everyone has kind of mentioned.
Brennan, do you want to share your thoughts, from a Journal of International Law perspective, your experience?
Absolutely. And and all of us are speaking to our own experiences here. Every journal does things slightly differently. But I see the newest question that Sarani just posted, and I'll talk about that a little bit. The way when you are all petitioning to become staffers. So we all talked about what our editor positions will be next year, but last year we were all staffers. So every 2L on a journal is a staffer, and staffer assignments are really broken up into like 2 categories. One would be your note, which is very individualized. You all get to pick a topic and write about it, and you are working with another 3L who is going to help you through that process, and you're working with a faculty member who's going to help you through that process. And that is very self-directed, self-paced, assignment-wise. There are due dates for things, but beyond those due dates, it's totally self-paced. Then the other part of that is actually reviewing the articles that have been selected for publication in the journal. And you will be working again with a 3L who is a managing editor. And they're just basically, supervising you throughout that process. And the way it worked on our journal, the Journal of International Law, was you'd have, first part was to go and get the sources. Because unlike your petitioning, where you receive a packet of sources and it's all self-contained, the whole world could be cited in an actual journal article, and you need to go pull those sources. So that's what we're talking about when we say things like racking, or it's called a source pull. We're just going to get the sources to put them together so that we can reference them. And then the second part of that process is a site check. And you are going through making sure that the author's statements are correct and that you're following the Blue Book throughout that process. So one of the things on the slide is why Blue Book. It's just to make sure that we are citing things properly and authors are supporting their statements. But for those source pull, we get 2 weeks on Journal of International Law, and we get 2 weeks for a site check also. So beyond those due dates, though, it's totally self-paced. It's not like, 3 a day or anything like that. It's just you are assigned your portion. Here's a due date 2 weeks out. Get it done when you can get it done in that time period, and that's the way that works.
Awesome. Thanks, Brennan. Shantal, I just want to answer one question, which I think is really important. I think someone talked about personal statements. This is a really important thing, at least to me, because this year, JLI would be dedicating 50% of the score to personal statements. 50% would be petition score. I think all journals have some kind of personal component. Feel free to check the document that the petition committee shared, which gives description of each of the journal and their requirements. On our end, JLI's end, I would say, I think the uniform requirement is 1-page, single-spaced, maybe Times New Roman 12-point font, if I'm not wrong. But again, feel free to check with the description, the document. This is diversity bluebooking session. We are talking to diverse students. It's really important to mention that do not feel that you have to self-censor yourself in the personal statement, because we want you to talk about you. Obviously, we cannot, this is the whole process is anonymous. We cannot have names or X500, but anything short of that, feel free to use this as an opportunity to tell us your life story. What brought you here? What do you want to achieve in this journal? What do you bring to the team, to the table? And basically, also use this as an opportunity to showcase your writing skills. It can be super concise. At the same time, it can have a little song to it, a little nice narrative. And I think I mentioned this in one of the other sessions. Some people had genuine questions about, okay, what, our situation could be unique. What if we are afraid that talking about that will identify us? You don't have to worry about this at all. It's not your problem that there are only 16% of diverse students in Minnesota law. It's Minnesota law's problem. But having also being part of admissions ambassadors and diversity and belonging committee, I have access to the sincere and honest efforts Minnesota law is taking to increase diversity. So in a nutshell, feel free to express yourself in the personal interviews. If you can, this may be too much to ask, but if you can, even before the petition period starts, when you have flow of inspiration, just draft personal statements for each of those journals even before you have the requirements, and try to cater it to each of the journal. That is my personal advice. Shantal, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent you can, I would definitely say cater it to the journal. And I just really want to emphasize, please don't censor your experience, because your experience is unique. That is super valuable. And I've personally seen firsthand I have a team of people that I work with who review articles, and they all send them to me. And I have personally seen firsthand how unique backgrounds change and really add value to that process of reading, reviewing, understanding articles. And so I want you to know that all of the journals recognize the value of diversity, and in this particular context, it's abundantly clear what that brings to the table. That is an asset. You should treat it like an asset. It's shitty that sometimes you have to use your minority status and put that out in the world, and you don't feel like you have to do that, but you're valuable. We value your perspective. And if it feels like something that you want to write about, I want to hear about that. I think that's awesome. Yeah. So, are there any other initial questions?
I have a little follow-up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the format? Should it look like a college admissions essay or cover letter? Yeah, I think it can be, I mean, I would say it's almost similar to like your personal statement that you wrote when you applied to law school, but not as intense. It's shorter. Again, you can look at the requirements that are posted, and Navin probably has a better idea about this, but like a page. I think I used some stuff that I had in my personal statement for applying to law school, and I used some stuff that I haven't had in cover letters. You know, helps if you have some language that's already drafted. But I think, and this is again like my personal experience, and I know when I was petitioning, I was like, what journal do I want to be on? Like, there's all these journals. Do I rank all of them? And I didn't. And I really thought about what journal I wanted to be on, and I focused my efforts in that area, and I tried to make my personal statement reflect that. Not everyone does that, and you don't need to, but that's just something that worked for me. And I think, you know, when you think about what you're really interested and what you want to dedicate your time to, it makes the work that you're doing feel more purposeful and enjoyable.
Thanks, Maddie. I just want to add one thing to a really important point Maddie said, and I also see a question from Jessica. I'll also answer that. I think, you know, there is some value to also ranking the journals. I personally did it. There's also other people who don't. You know, before joining or even petitioning, I did get a chance to, like, you know, talk to folks who are already on the journal. I know it was a privileged position last year. This time, you know, it's a little bit different. But I think, you know, from an EIC perspective, what I can tell you is, when you, so say for example, if someone is really, really interested in Journal of International Law, I would advise, my personal advice would be they should rank Journal of International Law as number 1, because when they rank Journal of International Law as number 1, the Journal of International Law gets to take a first quote unquote crack at them. So that not only increases your chances of being on a journal in general, but also in your preferred journal of choice in particular. So there is some value to ranking. Also, you know, it's a very personal choice. We have our own interests and experiences and background and our goals and objective on what we want to achieve during our 1 or 2 years on a journal. So think about it. Feel free to ask questions. And also, it's an experience. It's a community within the law school. So you have to think about all those social factors as well. I'll just quickly answer Jessica's question. You know, I'll let Shantal, Brennan, Maddie, and Aron share their experiences. You know, from JLI perspective, you know, it's a journal of law and inequality. You know, we are the 2nd oldest journal in our law school. We have been around for 40 years. You know, we're putting out issue 30, not volume 39. But, you know, we concentrate primarily on issues of inequality. We are a topical journal, but we are also a flagship journal on that particular issue. So we are expecting staff members to have some sense of understanding of what inequality is and how it exists in the current legal system and how it interacts and permeates different practice areas. You don't have to have personally faced any kind of inequality yourself or any of your family members. We just want at least folks to demonstrate and articulate their appreciation of the existence of inequality within the legal system and how it affects different categories of people. I hope that helped, Jessica, and I'll let others, you know, opine on, you know, what their personal statements look like.
I think one thing that I had a really hard time figuring out to write, because I was like, I can read a book and make changes in a document, like, pick me. And like, that's true and helpful, and it's okay to say, like, I have attention to detail and stuff like that if that's something that resonates with you. But I think one thing that's really helpful is to maybe discuss what you might write your note about if you have some ideas on that. And it doesn't have to be like, I want to write about this very specific topic, but you can say, like, I care a lot about environmental law. I would like to write in the field of environmental law. Here are the qualifications I have to do that. Here's why I think, like, I've picked that general area. And that's not binding, like no one's expecting you to do that. But I think that framework can sometimes be helpful to just start writing and like get something on the page. Because I had just such a hard time figuring out what to say that made me unique in this particular context. And I think the note topic can be a framework to kind of guide that.
I think I would, oh, go ahead, Maddie.
Oh, okay. I'll upload mine to the chat, my personal statement from last year for JLI, if people want to look at it. It's not great, I don't think, but you guys can just look at it if you're struggling.
I was just gonna say that I think I definitely echo Shantal's point about like potentially incorporating some kind of idea of like what you want to write for your note into the different like personal statements that you write for the journals. Can be like a useful kind of at least like place to start. And like it's okay to change your mind later too and whatnot. But I think you know the one thing I would also say that is like the Minnesota Law Review specific is that for our journal you can write your note on like any topic. So like I wrote mine about immigration law, and you know, so that's just, you know, something to keep in mind. But the one nice thing is that for all 4 journals, there's a lot of kind of like room to write your note. So you're not really restricted necessarily. But like Navin said, if you're really interested in international law, then I would recommend you know, ranking International Law Journal pretty high.
And just trying to track on the chat there too. Yeah, I agree with what Shantal just posted to Sarani, but absolutely, what your note is, you're going to have a meeting with Dean McGovern at the beginning of next fall, and he'll talk to you about the note selection process and whatnot. But I think when we're saying like something you might want to write a note on, we're just talking about following your passion. And I think that that's something that probably comes through in the personal statement. And so write your personal statement on something you're passionate about and something that, you know, describes you, would be my advice. I actually, you know, I guess this is the one thing about Zoom is doing everything from home. I was able to just pull it up. And I wrote my personal statement on something that was going on for the Journal of International Law that was going on in the world at the time, and just like what I would blog about it. And I didn't know I did that. So this is great question, and glad we could get to revisit that. But I would just say follow your passion.
Yeah, I think the key to the personal statements is like journal work is very independent, and a lot of it is kind of sucky, and I'm not trying to encourage you not to do it, but like it's not the first thing that I want to do when I wake up in the morning, and it's not something I do for fun at night, you know? So this is just a way to say like, is this person actually interested in the material, and are they going to like make an effort to engage in it? It's nothing more than that. So if it's law, science, and tech, write a little bit about why you care about science and tech. If it's international law, what interests you about that? If it's MLR, like why do you love the law? It really doesn't matter what you say, just like as Navin and I think everyone has said, like just be true to yourself. Like that so comes through in the personal statement. And I think you can tell when you read something that's like authentic to that person.
Yeah, that's what I meant about like when I kind of had my first comment about this. I kind of meant like, if you're not interested in law, science, and technology, don't force yourself to write a super good person, like try to like make yourself into someone who the Journal of Law, Science, and Technology would want to have. If you really want to be on a journal, just try to write a really good and you don't care which one it is, like just try to write a really good personal statement about who you are and what you bring to the table. Like don't try to force yourself to be something that you think that journal is going to want. And if you're not interested in it, like don't force yourself to be.
No.
Yeah, I think Shantal,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's a question about journal versus moot court. I just want to ask Navin if maybe you want to just give a cursory overview of the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I was being super extra this year, and for me, as a non-native speaker of the English language, I just wanted a lot of experience, oral advocacy and writing experience. So I was on national moot court this past year. I was also on a clinic and also did journal. The workload was all right, and it was manageable, partly because I had worked before, but again, it's super subjective. It could be different experience for different people, but I really enjoyed the brief writing experience. I enjoyed the oral component of it. It's kind of similar, like 1L legal research and writing. One semester you write a 13,000 word Supreme Court brief, and then the following semester you go through different rounds of oral arguments. There are going to be 2 different constitutional issues. Last year it was Fourth Amendment and Second Amendment. So yeah, a quick answer would be it highly depends. Not a lot of people do it. I don't know if I maybe know one person who did that with another moot court. So hope that helps. I just wanted to also mention, just supplement Shantal's answer to Ivy's question. Ivy, I was also kind of thinking like you, I was really interested in JLI. I remember even talking to Shantal about it at some point, during our last after finals or something like that. So I ranked JLI number 1 and I ranked MLR number 2. Again, as Shantal said, I don't know if it never happens, but MLR takes in like around 40 people, 39, 40 staff members. JLI, JIL, and JLST take in like 25 people. So we're talking about 105 staff members. And historically, it seems like around 130 or 140 people have like submitted their petitions. So I don't know if this helps, but to answer your question directly, if you don't rank MLR number 1, it's highly unlikely you get in. But again, whatever you're passionate about, I would still recommend it to rank that particular journal as super high.
Awesome. Any other kind of cursory questions? Cool. Well, how long are the notes? Mine is 11,000 words, what we call above and below the line. So that's like the citations and the actual interesting text to read. And that comes to like 32 pages, I think. Others?
Mine's shorter. It's not being published, but it's due today, so maybe I'll add more to it. But I think mine's about 25 pages. It's like 5,200 words maybe of actual text.
Yeah, it depends. Like for example, I initially thought mine would be around 5,000, 6,000, but when I started writing, it was just above the line ended up being 9,000. But there are also at JLI, there are like 2 different categories. We have our Journal of Law and Inequality, which is the one that we publish. There's also Inequality Inquiry, our online companion. So we publish student notes on both those platforms. Say, for example, if you still just wanted to keep it to 5,000 words, there are 2 notes that are published on Inequality Inquiry. There are 6 published on JLI. So I think, if you're looking for a traditional journal and not the online companion, somewhere around like 8,000, 9,000 is a decent size. And if you're strictly looking for the JLI Inequality Inquiry, the online companion, it'll be around like, 5,000 words. I see a couple questions. I think, with Jessica's, yeah, I don't know. I didn't have any plans of studying abroad. I'll let others speak to it, but I wouldn't say you can't do anything else if you're on a journal because, we are working remote right now. So things happen, and the same racking and site checking experience, the same note research can also be done online. It may be a little difficult when you're in your 3rd year as an editor and study abroad, that may be a little difficult, but again, as a staff member, I'll let the other journals speak for themselves, but I think that should not be impossible.
I can just follow up on Navin's point there. So I think one thing I would recommend if you're interested in studying abroad your 3L year is, and also doing a journal, is whatever journal you get on to try to be an articles editor. Because if you're an articles editor, a lot of your work is done in the spring semester of 2L year. So it's much easier, and then also in the summer, like before you start your 3L year. So a lot of it is your kind of 3L editing work is like done before you even start your 3L year. So it would make your study abroad experience a lot more manageable. So that's one thing you can kind of plan around that and still do a study abroad.
We have a question about how competitive positions are, and I'm just typing out an answer too, but on JLST, there are enough positions for everyone who wants to be an editor to come back 3L year if they want to. Is that true everywhere else also?
Yeah, I would second that. Maddie can add some more context here. We had 23 staff members last year. This year, we're planning to have 25, our maximum capacity. And this year, we have 21 editors. This was the first time we have over 20 editors. Until this past year, there were 14 or 15 editors. So to answer the question, I think as long as you do a decent job during your staff member year and you like the experience, and if you want to apply for an editor position, you should be able to get an editor position. It's just a matter of if you're looking for a specific, say, articles editor and a lead editor, that may be a little bit competitive because that could be based on your performance and review. But otherwise, it should be relatively easy. And I'll also answer Sarani's question. Yes, it is definitely a one-year commitment, but MLR, I think strongly recommends and advocates folks staying on for the third year. I'll let Aron talk about it. But also in JLI, we are starting to also recommend advise folks, if you really like the experience, we would love to have you back because, there's 1 year of institutional knowledge that you folks have, and obviously you would have done a really good job. So we would want that, as an editor leadership position.
Yeah, so I can just quickly follow up there from MLR's perspective. So yeah, it's one of those things where this semester, so spring semester of 2L year, there's kind of a application process to apply for editor positions. Again, it's not too important for the petition process, but like I said, I'm an articles editor, so you help select articles. Maddie said that she's a managing editor. There you kind of help go through the site checks and kind of manage the article. And then there's also kind of leadership positions in the different departments. And then obviously editor-in-chief as well. So for MLR, there's a vote for editor-in-chief, and then the rest of the positions for the editors are kind of decided by the editors. But I would say, yeah, for MLR, it is strongly encouraged that you, and everyone gets an editor position for MLR. It just depends on which department. And at the end of the day, they're not all that different, the different editor positions. So there's some kind of, it just depends on when you do the work, essentially. So I think it's, that's not something to worry about of whether I'll get an editor position. It's kind of, everyone gets one.
Just what you said about when you do the work. I can say that, for example, part of the reason why I wanted to be a managing editor is because most of my work will be next year for that volume of the journal, the articles that are being published. if you're an articles editor, you start working more like in the spring semester doing stuff. And my wedding was supposed to be in like a couple weeks. So I didn't want to have a ton of work at this time. And that informed my decision.
On the flip side, like I wanted to be an articles editor because I think like I like reading articles and learning new stuff. Most of the work for our journal for articles editor is in the spring of your 2L year, which means next year I'm going to get 4 credits and do basically no work, which is a cool way to get credits. And to continue that, like, sorry, there's not a fixed number of article editors. We usually have 4, but we can have more. Should we keep going?
That is correct.
When did we apply to be an editor? In the beginning of this semester. Also, for those of you worried about Maddie's wedding, it will be in fall. We're all invited.
Yeah, now I'm just like screwed on both ends because it's going to be in the fall when all my work's going to be, so.
All right. What time is it? We have 25 minutes. Let's plow along and maybe we'll skip going through every rule one by one. Does that sound okay to folks on the chat? We're happy to answer questions about the rules.
Yeah, I think it's good. We can get started, and as you said, like, we'll just flow through, and obviously we'll get to those questions. It's until like 1:15. Maybe we make a hard stop at like 1:05 or 1:10 based on the questions coming in, and then answer those questions. That sound good?
Sounds good to me. Does that sound good to everyone? Cool. All right. Maddie, you want to walk us through why we Blue Book?
Yeah. We've kind of talked about it already a little, but I have my Blue Book here, so I can show it to you guys. We use Blue Book in the petition process because when you are a staff member on a journal, your job is to basically be the first line of defense in cite checking articles. So you look at all the citations and make sure that they are following the correct Blue Book format. So Blue Booking essentially is something that you can just learn. So you want people who are on the journals want to be sure that you can look at the rules and apply them basically. And you'll also have to make the citations in your student note Blue Book formatted. So that's why. Is this me still? Okay. Blue Book exercises, they are just kind of like a sheet of paper that has a bunch of different sources, and you have to figure out what rule goes to which source and then apply the rule. 40% of the petition score. You make handwritten edits, which is why we recommend using erasable pens like this to do the exercises. And anything else that anyone has?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything. Feel free to download the Word document that we shared, and that gives you an example of like how a pre-corrected version of a Blue Book exercise with all the deliberate mistakes look like. And we also walk you through like, how a hand edited Blue Book exercise would look like and how a Word document edited Blue Book exercise would look like. And then finally, with all the fixes in, it'll be, someone just asked on chat whether they can share. I think that is a good resource. Someone shared it already. So yeah, Maddie has pretty much covered everything.
Aron,
Okay.
you want to talk about how you tabbed?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I don't know if you can really see it. It's like a lot of tabs. But So one thing is if you do have like a physical like copy of the Blue Book, because there's one online too, and I think Navin will probably talk about that. But if you have a physical copy of the Blue Book, I would strongly encourage all of you to tab it you uh, before you start your petition process. Um, and the one thing I would say it's important to do that is because when you're actually doing, especially the Blue Book exercises, it's going to be really difficult to not have it tabbed and just like have to find each section individually. It's just going to save you probably like hours of work if you tab it. And everyone has a different way to tab it. Like I think Navin put in the chat, sometimes it can be easier to use just like 2 colors. I use like a lot of colors. It's whatever works for you. But I personally tab like all the different sections. So like we'll kind of go through some of those rules. But I think it's really important, and it also helps you kind of learn the overall structure of the Blue Book before you get started.
I actually didn't tab my Blue Book. I used the PDF version of the Blue Book for the most part for a couple of reasons. One of them is you can use Control F. So if the source is like kind of a weird one-off, it's an easy way to find like French parliamentary statutes or something like that. Like you can just Control F for kind of keywords. And so I found that really helpful. The other reason is like tabbing just doesn't like help me in my brain, and I kind of knew that about myself, so I decided not to spend the time doing that. If that's something that would make you feel secure or helpful, like absolutely tab. And then the digital versions of the Blue Book, there are many. So there's this online version which you can buy, and like I mentioned, there's a PDF. I'm going to share the PDF in the chat in just a second, but feel free to just use that and circulate it. It's been going around for a while. Or feel free to like buy the online version, which also has some nice resources to help decide like which kind of rule to use. And then one thing to really emphasize is it's on here. Ignore the blue pages, focus on the white pages and tables. So in legal writing, you've been doing citations, what we call above the line, like not in footnotes. Those use the blue pages for the citation format. Now, because we're doing below the line citations, footnotes, the white pages. And Brennan is about to demonstrate which those are. And Maddie. So the blue pages are the ones at the front, which are blue. The white pages are the next section, and the page itself is actually white. Does anyone have a page number for where the white pages start? 57.
57.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So just to help you out, like that's what those are. Make sure you're using the white pages, not the blue pages, because the blue pages are going to use the wrong format, unfortunately. And that is true in like your case content, right, and also in the Blue Book. Any questions on that? Sort of broad Blue Booking generally. Okay. So we have this slide here. It's just an overview of the rules and where you can find them in the Blue Book. This can be helpful. There's also, it's on the back of the Blue Book, which I think, yep, we have a slide there to show you. So this is where you can look up like which rule it is. Oftentimes it's not as easy as this, but hopefully mostly it'll just be like seeing the word Constitution and going to R11. When you're actually doing, Brennan, did you wanna?
Could you drop back 2 slides real quick? Just one thing I remember from my Blue Booking session last year and then going through the petition process was the rules listed on the left do apply to like many of your sources or almost all of your sources. And then the rules listed on the right apply to the specific source that you're given. So when I just remember taking this slide from last year and having it, and when you're doing your Blue Book for the petition process, you'll want to do the rule on the right for the specific source which you are given, and then you'll want to use and run through the rules on the left just to make sure that all of those are also met for every source.
And then that's true here also, the same thing before. Like these, ooh, that's hard. Apply generally, the rest of them to here are specific. And then these tables we're going to talk about later. Sorry, that's awful, but hopefully that gives you a general idea. Sorry, there we go. So the way you'll know which, like when you get your blue booking exercises, you won't have a real source. They're all going to be pretend. So the way you'll know what they are is you'll get a list of things that tell you what the sources are. Hopefully that's pretty intuitive, but feel free to ask us any questions about that. Okay. Maddie, do you want to explain just kind of what this is?
Yeah, so this is what a Blue Book exercise in your petition packet would look like. The exercises are source specific, so you can see how the brackets are each individual sources with corresponding rules. Do we want to just go right to the exercise and skip the rule overview?
I think so. Does anyone want us to walk through the rules? I'm not seeing any strong feelings, so we're going to skip.
One thing, could I just say just one kind of quick thing about rule 1? Just like it's more like a personal experience that I had during the petition process. Okay, so like just like rule 1, it's more, let's see, rule like 1.2 and like 1.3 is like the signals. So I would say on page 60 of your blue book, where the rule 1.3 order of signals, there's like a really good example that kind of lays out how you should have like how you string together like multiple signals and like what punctuation to use. So I found this paragraph to be really helpful, kind of like when I was going through the blue booking.
Yeah, I also found that helpful.
As far as some of these specific sources, I did just want to flag a couple things. I did not know what a periodical was. I had to remind myself. So that's like newspaper articles or journals would all be found in that periodical rule. So just if you unfamiliar with that word, that's what you're going to find in Rule 16. Shantal stopped on Rule 18. That's another rule that is pretty all-encompassing because it is internet sources, but it's also other electronic sources, such as movies are included later in that rule, or like CD-ROMs or audio files, podcasts. So it's also a really all-encompassing rule. And then I didn't know the difference between what a foreign material was and an international material was. So that would be Rule 20 and 21. And I'll just give like a cursory, foreign materials are going to be like country specific. And those are split up between common law and civil law systems. So just something to flag for yourself when you're looking at a foreign material. And then international sources are more like international bodies, such as UN documents or other international organizations, the International Monetary Fund or otherwise. So just want to flag that for everybody. Some of these things look intuitive, but when you go into the rules, you'll see that they encompass some slightly different things.
There's a thing in the back of your blue book called tables. I just want to flag for you, make sure you know about it. This is ways to abbreviate things in the citations. And you should only use the abbreviations in the tables if the rule directs you to the table, and you should only use the table that the rule directs you to. So there, like table 10 has abbreviations for states, cities, and countries, and table 13 has periodicals. If the rule only tells you to abbreviate according to 13, make sure you're not like abbreviating states to shorten them or cities to shorten them. I don't know if there are any rules that do that, but there are definitely some funky things in the tables. So just like kind of watch for what tables the rule directs you to. Yeah, Ashley, did you want me to repeat the thing about tables? So just make sure in the rule, the tables are just like abbreviations that kind of supplement the rule. So when you're using the tables, make sure you only go to the table if the rule directed you to that specific table. So the tables are not like rules 1 through 9 that apply broadly. The tables are like specific to the rule. So make sure you follow the rule to the table, kind of like I like to think very visually. So imagine it like being like a flow chart where you're like going to that part of the flow chart only if you reach the rule that sends you there.
And just one thing to follow up on Chantal's point. So if you go in your blue book to page 160, that's the rule on periodicals. So the bottom of page 160, it says the name of the periodical should appear in large and small caps, whether it is a journal, magazine, or newspaper, and should be abbreviated according to tables T13 and T10. So that's what Chantal's talking about how you have to look into the rule to see which table you go to abbreviate the words in the source.
So like don't use T6 if you're doing that rule, right? Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left in our planned time for the session. I'm happy to stay a little longer to answer questions and things like that, but let's work through a practice problem. So we have a practice exercise up on the screen, and Navin, there's some way to access this separately, right? Like a Word document?
Yeah, that is correct. They have, if they download the Word document on desktop, all these 3 exercises would be there along with the answers and the corrections and whatnot.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna mute ourselves for, let's say, 5 minutes. I know that's not a lot of time, but just give you a chance to work through it and see what errors you can find in 5 minutes. And then we'll go through it together.
Jessica, you're right, and Sarani is also right. It's a book, and if you can download the PowerPoint, the other slide talks about what that particular source is, and we also have keys. Hope this helps.
All right, we have 5 minutes left in our session. Should we jump back into the answer? So this is a slow walk through the answer, but I'm just going to put up the whole thing to show you what it looks like. So this is what the final corrected version would look like with all of your pens. You'll notice they use different pen colors. I'm fairly sure that's a violation of the petition rules. I'm pretty sure you can only use red and blue. Maddie, do you have an answer on that?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
I was just turning my video back on, but yeah. The comma thing is hard. And honestly, when you have a Word document, as you on MLR, I don't think they do their site checks on Word, but I would say look out for italicized commas. Just like check the commas after something that's italicized, because that's probably where there's going to be a tricky one hiding. You know what I mean? And it just takes practice. Like, you just have to look at it. It's a hard thing.
I would say it's much easier to catch if you have a not italicized comma up next.
Yeah.
Like, go to your Word document and type a comma and then type a comma and italicize it. And once you see them next to each other, you'll be like, oh, those do look different. But until you like tangibly look at it, you're like, what is that? Also, I just want to validate that that's like a frustrating experience that's dumb, and it's something that's never been a problem for me when I'm actually doing my site checks. And so I just want to like let you know that like we're sorry that that's frustrating. We also find it frustrating. It's okay to be frustrated by that.
I'm trying to look in this exercise for, it's hard to see in the corrections, like to point out the difference between an italicized comma.
I don't think there are any italicized commas here, unfortunately. Does anyone have questions about any of these rules or like how to write this out?
And also for folks for whom this may have been the only or first Bluebook session, feel free to go to that link that I shared on the Minnesota Law Review page that has recordings of the previous 4 other Bluebooking sessions that was facilitated by each of the journal. And there we tend to like take the entire time, in fact, just to go over this particular PowerPoint. So if you have any questions, that's also a good resource to use.
So since we're at the diversity Bluebook session, I just wanted to talk a second about like how the experience of the petition might be different because of your background. And I know Brennan has a story he's going to share too, but the topic last year was about something that was like pretty personal to me because it's something I've experienced because of the color of my skin. It was about border searches, which we're not supposed to say, but come for me, law school. So it was about like searches of personal property at the border. And that's something that I have absolutely experienced. I've absolutely experienced it because my dad is from India, because my last name is Pai, and like because I look a little brown. And there just weren't enough sources to like support my argument that was like, basically, this has the potential to be racist and that makes it a bad policy. There just wasn't enough to do a good job of doing that. But I started committing to that pretty early on because the minute I read about the topic, I was like, oh my God, I've like personally like felt the consequences of this policy. And so it was really hard. And I had multiple friends of South Asian backgrounds and Middle Eastern backgrounds who had very similar experiences and who eventually like gave up on the petition because they couldn't actually like write about the thing that was really important to them. I don't know what the topic is this year. It's secret. You're not going to know. But I just want to say, like, even if you end up in a position like that where it's like hard to keep going because of your background, and I don't know what it's going to be this year, but law school has a way of like bringing that up over and over again. I just like really urge you to keep going. You like belong in these spaces, you belong in these journals, you absolutely can do it, and it's going to be okay. So just like keep on keeping on and keep at the petition. You're going to kill it. I totally believe in all of you. But I want to let you know, like, it can be hard. If you ever run into a situation where like you're having a hard time with racism in the petition process, please reach out to me. I can't talk to you about the topic because that would be an honor code violation, but I'm here for you and I will share my email and like we're gonna get through this together. So Brennan has also a story from like a kind of different perspective.
Hey everyone, so I did want to say this before we ended today. Shantal and I both had the same OL, and she always said something that I really like, which is it's Michelle 3L. I don't know if you all know her or not, but she's great. And she said, "You are all at the University of Minnesota Law School. You are all worthy of being here." And I think that applies just as equally to journal. And you are more than a number. Unfortunately, the first thing that happens when you go through the petition process is you are assigned a number. And that's why we have been pushing things like personal statements. We fully support all of you guys filling out a personal statement, and you are all more than a number, and you are all worthy of being on a journal. We were all talking about what it was like to go through our petition last year, and there are just going to be points where you're frustrated, and that's frustrating, and it's a frustrating process. For me, one of those points last year was, as you can see, like in this example, relevant pop culture topic was selected, and that happens, and it can make things difficult depending on how you interpret things, given your different backgrounds. Last year, the author of one of the articles was Admiral Akbar. I'm a veteran, and it was hard to distinguish if they were using Admiral as a first name or a title in that situation, which would have affected how you were scoring the citation exercise. But it's okay to be frustrated. It is frustrating, but you are all going to get through it. And I look forward to working with all of you next year. As a note and comment editor for next year, I look forward to seeing what your passions take you to and seeing how they come out in your notes. So good luck with the petition process. We're here for any other questions. Maddie and Aron are going to wrap up, but you are all more than a number, and you are all worthy of being here. So thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I know we're a little over, and you guys are asking about practice stuff. Like if you've done this, if you've got the Bluebook practice exercise, don't kill yourself. You're all very capable people, and this is something that's manageable. It's stressful, but you can do it, and I wouldn't stress yourself out over practicing for it.
And yeah, I would just echo kind of what everyone said, is that, you know, the petition process, it is a process. And, you know, I think one thing I found to be helpful is just kind of trying to take it, you know, each day, just set yourself like little goals. And, you know, if you reach that goal, like don't like over exert yourself in terms of like the first few days, because then, you know, you kind of want to pace yourself throughout the process. And it is something, you know, we all went through it. And I think the fact that kind of coming back to kind of what Michelle said, or the comment that Michelle made, that everyone here is more than qualified enough to be a journal, because we're all at Minnesota Law. So like you've already made it. So this is just going to be kind of like one more kind of process. So good luck to everyone.
Yeah, I would just take the last few minutes to wrap up. Sorry, Shantal, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to ask if anyone had any questions. Otherwise, we can wind down the session. So.
Yeah, you know, I would just, you know, we are past 5 minutes, but there are still folks on. So I would just echo and agree with everything Shantal said. It's really, really important. I personally believe this process can be highly unequal at times, but you know, this can be a grueling process. But tell yourself, like, you know, if you're looking for any kind of inspiration, once you get on a journal, once you get on a leadership position, you have real power to change this process. I have personally can vouch for it. You know, we have made a lot of changes this year. But feel free to reach out to us. You know, we cannot obviously talk about the petition process, but we're there as like, you know, kind of a sounding board, or if you just want to vent. Again, you know, I just want to take a minute to thank Shantal, Aron, Brennan, and Maddie, and all of you for joining us. You know, you know our faces and names. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We would be happy to talk to you, especially this class is going through a unique experience given what we're going through. So feel free to reach out to us. And I'll leave the chat open for a few minutes so we can share our email addresses. And then we will upload this on the link that we shared. We'll also include a document called Questions Answered in Chat, so you can go back and refer to, you know, what was asked and what was answered. All right, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Shall I stop the recording?